Hi everyone, we are Group 5 and our topic is de-extinction. The project we picked is the resurrection of the extinct species, the woolly mammoth. Extinction is when an animal or plant species no longer has any individuals of that species alive in the world. The causes for extinction are habitat loss and introduced species, pollution, population growth, overhunting, overconsumption, and other influences. Some examples of extinct species are woolly mammoth, thylacine, passenger pigeon, and Carolina parakeet. For many years, it was thought that extinct species were forever gone. However, scientists found out ways to bring extinct species back to life. De-extinction, also known as resurrection biology, is the process of bringing back an extinct species. One way of performing de-extinction is using the extinct animal's DNA. Scientists mix it with the nearest living species' DNA to create the extinct animal. Our project is the resurrection of the extinct species woolly mammoth. The common feature a mammoth has is long, curved tusks, and northern species has a body covered with long hair. The mammoth went extinct 10,500 years ago, but there are some skeletal remains left from the Ice Age. The mammoth is one of the species that have the highest chance of getting resurrected among the extinct species. One of our goals of this project is to restore damaged biomes in the far north, the tundra and the taiga. These biomes had grassland ecosystems and were known as the mammoth steppe. The absence of the mammoths caused the ecosystem to have a decline, making the abundant grass diminish to shrub-dominated area, species-poor tundra, and boreal forest. The return of the mammoths to these biomes will bring back carbon-fixing grass, reduce greenhouse gas that is being released from the tundras, and restore ecological richness. As mentioned before, to perform de-extinction on the mammoth, we have to mix the DNA taken from the mammoths that have been frozen in ice and mix it with the closest related living species' DNA. The mammoth has been frozen in the ice from the Ice Age in Siberia. Scientists extracted the DNA from the mammoth and combined it with the closest related living species, the Asian elephant. The genes of the mammoth that are missing from the DNA degrading and breaking down can be replaced with the Asian elephant's DNA because they have very similar genomes. Although this does not give a pure woolly mammoth, it will still have mammoth traits like having long tusks, small ears, long shaggy hair, and blood that can adapt to cold weather. Once the resurrection of the mammoth is successful, scientists plan to create a herd of them at once and place them in Pleistocene Park, located in northeastern Siberia. If everything goes well and the mammoths survive, they will release the mammoths into the taiga and tundra biomes.
There are 3 ways of de-extinction. The first one is cloning. Cloning aims to create genetically identical copies of extinct species from preserved somatic cells. And the most famous example is Dolly the sheep in 1997. And the second one is backbreeding. Backbreeding aims to concentrate ancestral traits that persist within a population into a single individual using selective breeding. However, the genes that underlie these phenotypes may differ from those that were present in the extinct species. That is to say, we cannot ensure that the new species we derive from backbreeding is the species we need to de-extinction. And the final one is genetic engineering. It aims to edit the genome sequence within cells of living species. But the more degraded and old the tissue from the extinct species is, the more fragmented the resulting DNA will be, make genome assembly more challenging. And in this case, mammoths went extinct more than 10,000 years ago. The history is very long, so it may be inapplicable in this case. And this picture tells us a sequence of 3 ways of de-extinction. And look at this, the backbreeding. We have 2 different species, and by breeding them, we can derive a new species. And the cloning is to clone from a cell, and we can get the exact same DNA sequence as a phenotype. And the genome editing is to extract a specific gene from the DNA sequence and edit it in the lab to get what we need, the DNA sequence, and then we can breed it to what we want. Overall, the most practical and effective method is cloning. Cloning is a commonly suggested potential method of recreating extinct species, and it has become an increasingly mature technology over time. It's very effective and feasible measure of this project, so cloning may be expensive. However, our role is not to build a very large group of mammoths, so it may be more precise to use cloning to reconstruct several mammoths.
Hello everyone, I'm here to make an advantage analysis for the resurrection of woolly mammoths. As mentioned before, there are 3 ways of de-extinction: cloning, backbreeding, and genetic engineering. The most significant advantage of cloning is that it is the only method of the 3 that will provide an animal with the same genetic identity. This is done by extracting the nucleus from a preserved cell from woolly mammoths and swapping it into an egg cell whose DNA has been removed. The mammoths created by cloning will be exactly the same as the original one. It can create an exact genetic copy of the extinct species, while the other 2 ways can only have genetics to some extent, but the original gene pool was eliminated. However, since it is very difficult to find a viable mammoth cell, backbreeding and genetic engineering provide more feasible ways for us. In backbreeding, the created animals can be very similar to the extinct wild type in phenotype. Although the gene pool may differ from the extinct one, backbreeding is infinitely cheaper and doable, and it can produce a whole population of species, rather than one individual, such as in the case of cloning. Genetic engineering is a particularly promising approach to de-extinction. It is applicable in a majority of cases where DNA of reasonably good quality is available, and it is possible to sequence and assemble the genome of extinct organisms from highly degraded tissues. This technique enables scientists to pursue de-extinction in a wider array of species, including those for which no well-preserved remains exist. The past decade has seen enormous advances in technologies for Asian DNA isolation and genome assembly, and high-quality genomes are now available for several extinct species, including woolly mammoths. So for summary, backbreeding and genetic engineering are more feasible for resurrection of mammoths, while cloning is the only way to create genetically identical copies.
Although a lot of beneficial possibilities for the extinction of mammoths exist, there are also a number of problems and issues we should consider about. For cloning a mammoth, it is a critical problem for finding and saving intact cells. Since mammoths were usually buried under the Siberian permafrost, it is a difficult work for us to find and collect enough cells which are available for cloning. Also, it might cause damages to the permafrost environment. Another problem for cloning is its low survival rate. There are too many examples for cloned animals which could not survive more than a quarter of years. And the main reason of that is because of their abnormally fast growth rate. For backbreeding and genetic engineering, the biggest problem is their doubtful identities. Are they exactly the same species as their ancestors we would like to reborn, or just another exactly new species created by human beings ourselves? Even if we successfully reborn a mammoth, a lot of challenges are still waiting for us. The first one is biodiversity. The mammoths we could reborn are too few, and it is predictable that these creatures are lack of species diversity. This problem could not be solved without dozens of generations, which made the population of mammals is so weak in front of, for example, a sudden disease attack which might cause them extinct again. The next problem is the learning skill. In nature, animals learn their survival abilities from their parents by generations. However, for the reborn mammals, they do not have natural parents who to teach them how to be a mammoth, while human beings should take the responsibilities. But as a result, it is not conducive to the natural development of mammals. The limitation of suitable habitats is also a considerable problem. The mammoths have strict requirements for their habitats, such as temperatures, food, and so on. Any lacking of these requirements might cause the extinction of mammals, which is not only inhuman but also waste our efforts at all. Last but not least, the conflict between reborn creatures and currently existing species. If we put mammals return back to their nature habitats, they will be comfortable to live. It is unavoidable for them to have disputed to local species who have already lived here by generations. Without a proper solution between their relationship, it might cause unpredictable damages to the current ecosystem and even cause new extinctions.
As for operations, firstly, we will choose the best method to reborn mammals. For this process, cloning is a commonly suggested potential method of recreating extinct species. It takes the nucleus from the preserved cells of an extinct species and placing it in the nucleus of its closest relative's egg. In this case, we will choose elephants as carriers. One of the most famous clones was Dolly. Thus, compared to other methods, clone is the most effective and feasible measure of this project. Previous research have found that current mammal cells nucleus only show signs of activity, which means it is recovered partially, but that's not enough. We need the mammal cell in better condition to help us resurrect the extinct species. Therefore, as for our plan, we need to find a well-preserved mammal cell first. Then, find a proper source of oocytes to accept the mammal's nuclei. Finally, we will transfer the mammals' cloned embryos to elephants' foster mothers. However, the previous procedure is idealized. Elephants are not laboratory mice, and no place around the world maintains a large number of elephants that we can use for this purpose. Besides, we cannot guarantee success even with large number of elephants. So far, difficulty like this, we need time to resolve. For further consideration, we plan to create an ecological area in Siberia for the reborn mammoth and offer him enough food for his growth. Recreating an extinct species is a massive project which consumes time and resource. So there are many unknown problems waiting to be solved.
Of course, the reintroduction of the mammoth into our current world accompanies with ethical issues. The main ethical issues being violating religion principles, specifically that of Christianity, which is the most practiced religion in the world. To bring the mammoth back to life, us humans would be charged by the act of playing God, which is defined as when humans make choice concerning abortion, genetic engineering, the basic conditions of future life on the planet, interference with evolutionary processes, or any radical tampering with the allegedly natural development of human beings and their environment. As we're bringing the mammoth back to life, we'll be creating new beings which don't exist in this world before, which is also an act of God. We will also be resurrecting the dead, as the mammoth was extinct a long time ago, which is also an act of God. We will also interfere with natural evolutionary processes, which is also against Christianity principle. For our future plans with the de-extinction of the mammoth, we have decided to build a mammoth park, similar to that of a Jurassic Park. In the park, we will restrict all forms of interaction between the mammoth and our contemporary world. The park will have its own habitat and ecosystems, in which we conduct repeated, controlled experiments to see how the mammoth interacts with our world, with different organisms and different environments and temperatures. Through that, we will see how the mammoth impacts our ecosystems. And only through these repeated controlled experiments can we understand if the reintroduction and the de-extinction of the mammoth will cause harm to our world. And if not, after the experiments, we'll finally consider to actually release the mammoth back to our world, therefore successfully performing de-extinction.